Okay, I want to turn now to the issue of climate change, where we fear to tread, of course. And I'm going to do a two-parter on climate change. I'm going to do firstly the problem with the climate change ideology that's out there, and then I'm going to actually do what is the true view of this issue in the next section. First of all, I want to raise this because for months now it has been dominating the news cycle. From the Paris Agreement through to power prices and drought, then of course school strike for climate change, Extinction Rebellion, Greta Thunberg. It's been out there, it continues to be out there. And I want to ask the question, what are Christians to make of all of this? Good question. It's important to answer it. Some will say, well, you know, we're supposed to be stewards of creation. Therefore, we can partner with this movement because there's some good in it. Well, let's say the first part of that is true. We're supposed to be stewards of creation. Is that the same as going along with the climate change debates of recent times? The answer is, and this is really important before I even go into the detail, the answer is no. It is not. You can have a real concern about one, and it's still foolish to get involved in the other, and I'll tell you why. The climate change debate, as we know it at large in the community and particularly in the political world, is not, and I repeat, is not motivated by Christian concern for stewardship. It is motivated by something very different. It's motivated by something that is strongly anti-Christian, and it is certainly strongly ideologically motivated, and it is not grounded in truth. Consider its fruits. And this is actually a very good litmus test. You know, to really understand something and get to the guts of it, it can take you quite a bit of time and analysis. And I spend a lot of time thinking about these things and trying to figure out where are they coming from, what's behind them. That takes time. But there's something easy that you can do, and that is to look at the fruits of a thing. Just look at what it's producing on the surface and just litmus test it. Use your gut. Use your Holy Spirit inspired thinking just to go, yep, that doesn't really accord with truth. There's some problems here. And you know straight away to keep digging. And that's really where I've come from. And consider some of the fruits. Here's one. Recent predictions, or not recent predictions, predictions over decades now, all of which are usually welcomed with much fanfare by leaders and media personalities, all of which have been wildly incorrect. And that's important because it means that they weren't true. 1970. Paul Ehrlich, between 1980 and 1989, he says some 4 billion people, including 65 million Americans, will perish in the Great Die-Off. Actually, goes back further than that. I think it's Malthus wrote in, was it the 18th century? That, you know, effectively the Earth is going to run out of food and we're all going to die. And he didn't expect it to go quite as long as it has. 1989, United Nations. Entire nations will be wiped out by the year 2000 if sea level rises are not stopped. Well, that never happened. 2004, the Pentagon. Britain will be Siberian in less than 20 years. Well, we're pretty much the 20-year mark now. 2006, Al Gore. Remember Al Gore? Humans may have only 10 years left to save the planet from turning into a total frying pan. 2007, Tim Flannery. He was making a short, medium-term prediction. He said even the rain that falls isn't actually going to fill our dams and river systems. 2008, Al Gore again. The North Polar ice cap will be ice-free by the summer of 2014. 2019, Senator Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. Okay, see, 12 years. Let's ring right. 2019, Greta Thunberg. For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. Right, well, it hasn't, clearly. These were taken seriously, a lot of them. In 2006, I studied science, and really, the stuff Al Gore was saying and all that was taken pretty seriously. And if you were not on that train, you're a bit of a pariah. And I remember actually writing an essay at the time, effectively taking the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Changes from the UN's predictions about 2000 to 2100, and doing sort of a 15-year audit and saying, well, how many of their predictions, are we on track to meet what they've said is going to happen? It was so wildly off, it wasn't funny. It's all levels of prediction have been wrong and wrong and wrong. Meanwhile, I say something very simple, and this is very important for Christians. What's God's prediction about the climate? Genesis 8:22. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. There is an alarmism. Oh, there's a lot in that verse. We'll break it down later. There is an alarmism which needs to be called out for what it is. I think alarmism is too generous. It's lies. It's a great big lie. Alarmism is too kind. I find it hard to accept that many of these people do not know that they are exaggerating. And the thing that struck me most about Greta Thunberg's speech, and I know I'm not supposed to criticize a young girl, but you know, I'll be as kind as I can. There is something in Greta Thunberg's speech that is important, and it is the post-Christian theme. Notice this, the eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say, we will never forgive you. We will not let you get away with this. She also says, if you really understood the situation and kept failing to act, then you would be evil. And I refuse to believe that. That is both post-Christian statements. Firstly, no forgiveness, post-Christian world. Secondly, a world in which people are not actually enslaved to evil, in which people are good, that is also a post-Christian world. Jesus himself says, you who are evil know how to give good gifts to your children. I mean, that language is throughout the Bible. That's another topic. I'll do another day. But also a world in which God's sustaining providence over the world is gone. That is a post-Christian world. Where is the ideology coming from then? What's driving it? Because it is an ideology. Because when you scratch below the surface, this is not merely about climate change. This is an entire worldview. It has its own theory of human rights, of justice, of the nation state, of immigration, of humanity, of democracy, of good and evil. And the best sources, I think, for what exactly this worldview, this ideology is, are some of the leaders of the movements themselves. Stuart Basden, for example, is a co-founder of Extinction Rebellion. And I've heard of Christians marching in Extinction Rebellion. Listen to this. This is his words. He says, I'm here to say that Extinction Rebellion isn't about the climate. You see, the climate's breakdown is a symptom of a toxic system that has affected the way we relate to each other as humans and to all of life. All of life, worldview, fully integrated ideology. It's not about the climate. It's a little bit like safe schools, remember? The label on the tin is not what it is. Ros Ward, blew that wide open when she said it's not about safe schools at all. It's not about bullying. It's about something else. Same thing here exactly. And you'll notice the four aims of Extinction Rebellion. It's not just the co-founders' words, it's the aims of the whole thing. Firstly, government must declare a climate and ecological emergency. Secondly, zero net greenhouse gas emissions by 2025. Impossible unless you bomb the entire world out of existence. 3, create a citizens' assembly on climate and ecological justice. 4, dismantle colonial systems of oppression, decolonize and replace oppressive government structures. Notice number 4, dismantle colonial systems of oppression. It is a whole worldview. It is an anti-West, anti-capitalist system. And the key words tell us a lot. Dismantle, decolonize, rebellion, oppression, liberation. Those words always, when you see them, always think of something. Think of one thing, Marxism. Climate change alarmism is one of the many suits of clothes that's being worn in the modern West by Marxism. Because we don't have much old-fashioned economic Marxism these days. Back in the day when those, Marxists were all about the bourgeoisie and the proletariat and the economic battle and the rich and the poor. We're not there anymore. We know, it's just talked about a lot, we're in a world of cultural Marxism, but it gives itself away. Cultural Marxism is different power struggles, race, gender, male, female, sexuality, all these sorts of things, able and disabled, that kind of stuff. It's just taken out the economic bit and put in all the rest. And it'll give itself away with the same old buzzwords. They're the same words used by Ros Ward with respect to safe schools. She talks of decolonizing sexuality. She talks of casting off the oppressive shackles of heteronormativity to usher in a whole new way of being human and relating to life. You see, it's exactly the same. And here we go again. Stuart Basden refers to mass delusions which have been coded into European societies. These, he says, are white supremacy, patriarchy, Eurocentrism, heteronormativity, so the fact that boys love women love men and men love women, the power of the rich elite, and so on. He says the task of Extinction Rebellion is to dispel these delusions. We need to cure the causes of the infection, not just alleviate the symptoms. To focus on the climate's breakdown, the symptom, without focusing attention on these toxic delusions, the causes, is a form of denialism. Worse, it's a racist, sexist form of denialism that takes away from the necessary focus of the need for us all to decolonize ourselves. So there you go. Reject this view of the world and you are a mass-deluded, racist, sexist denialist from whom the world needs to be liberated. And if you have been in that position of rejecting what they believe and getting the receiving end of what they say about you, you'll know that that's pretty much on point. This is a worldview where nothing is about truth, everything is about power. The truth that heterosexuality is normal, natural and healthy, they say, is nothing but power and oppression. In the hands of white patriarchal colonizers, it must be destroyed. The truth that Christianity spread through Europe, raising its people to a level of astonishing civilization, is nothing, they say, but power and oppression in the hands of white patriarchal colonizers. Europe and its systems and the West must be destroyed completely. It's a fully destructive ideology. Power, power, power. There is no truth. Truth claims are claims that are oppressive, There is no peace, there's only struggle, and importantly, there is no forgiveness, and that's exactly what Greta said. Marxism is ugly. It only knows how to destroy and tear down. That's what it's for. It only knows resentment and hate. That's what it's all about. It only knows violence and struggle. That's why they are violent. That's why they do engage in civil disobedience. It only knows power and it hates truth. It says truth is oppressive. It is in fact a cloak, a suit of clothes that is worn by postmodernism when postmodernism becomes political. And one of the chief architects of postmodern thought, Jacques Derrida, actually said that. His idea was postmodernism, and he said, look, when this becomes political and starts to filter through society, it'll be taken on by Marxism. That's what it'll look like. And he admits himself that the crux of his whole philosophy was destruction. That's what it was all about. That's the core of postmodernism, that's the core of Marxism, to destroy. But more specific than that, it is in fact the destruction of truth, and more specific than that, it is the destruction of God. For God is the author of objective truth, and in him objective truth consists. That's what Derrida said. He said that he was out to destroy the Logos, and we know what the Logos is, the eternal word, and he said that that destruction would play out through Marxism in a political sense. This is not, if you haven't understood any of that, understand this. This is not the biblical call to stewardship. No, it's not. This is a whole ideology. It's been creeping through the West as cultural Marxism has in so many different areas, safe schools being the obvious one, a classic example. Here it is again in the climate change debate and what passes for a climate change debate in the public squares. I'm here to tell you it is not of Christ. It is not. In fact, it is, at its root, sourced in a system of thinking that is anti-Christ. Here's a verse from 2 Corinthians 6. What partnership have righteousness and lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? Or what harmony has Christ with Belial? Or what is a believer in common with an unbeliever? Or what agreement has the temple of God with idols? Don't pretend that we can simply get involved in this because there's a biblical call to stewardship. That is deeply foolish and deeply wrong. And I tell you what, we will reap the whirlwind if we go down that line. So let's be wise. That's the call we always have. And let's understand what's really going on when it comes to the broad cultural manifestation of the climate change debate as we've seen it in recent months.